by our president, and there was a great appreciation for how far they did go. So thank you for making that point, and it is important, to respond based very much on what has been said by Economos Turkey. Yes.
Yeah. And so we are even quoting and giving the reference to their statement, because we thought that is the way to show that there are our colleagues in Turkey who are calling for the integrity of the monuments to be available to all, because we all know that he's not going to change his statement.
Exactly. You're a very pragmatic and practical woman, and you're dead right.
Yeah. To call him go back and make it the museum, it's if he didn't listen to United States of America, he's not going to listen to Europa Nostra or to ICOMOS.
Yeah, but I think these were important principles that they made, and they really have to be commended for doing what they did, I think.
Yeah. So now it's good, and it is yet another illustration how much we can join forces in the sort of the spirit of what we have been here discussing about having the society as a full. It is experts and civil society hand working.
Sorry, may I ask anything else? Because does anybody explains all the things that are said today in these 2 days? How do they find? How do they come in the paper? In the next version of the paper? What are the next steps, and when will we get a final version?
This is a very good question, if I can intervene. It was one of the questions I was going to ask
Who can
afterwards.
Answer that?
Sorry, do you mean the final version of this conference?
No, the quality.
No, of the qualities.
Okay, well, in the discussion I will mention that, but we have had quite some time with feedback on the quality principles. There have been, as you have seen in some of the talks yesterday and today, there were reference to particular recommendations and issues that people had, and these have been discussed in detail. We had a European group meeting with 33 countries at the beginning of June, and we went through, because some of the we were responding to all of the queries, and there were different responses as to how the recommendation should be changed. So we had presented those in advance, and we discussed those, and there was pretty much a general agreement on almost everything. And after the meeting, then we worked in our secretariat on the document showing the changes proposed, and these were sent to the original working group, which reconstituted. And we had only the end of last week, we had a very, very long Zoom meeting. And we went through all of those also to bring the working group along. And to be honest with you, there were a few extra things which hadn't been brought up, but which had been identified by working group members. And there's a couple of, at least 3 of the working group members have presented here. So that was agreed. We have, I have a copy of the updated document, but I'm not sharing it because we really have to go through it. And we're hoping in the next, this week, to go through it from a more editorial process and make sure that the changes we have made, that there aren't knock-on effects on other parts, just to make sure it's legible. And once that happens, it will be translated into French and then peer-reviewed and then published. It's just that an organization like ECOMOS has 2 official languages. We couldn't release it in one and not the other. So I hope that answers your question. But it's a document which, it's not like the Venice Charter. It's a document which will change over time. It's not perfect. It covers so much. It's so vast. But it must be seen as being flexible, and it must be seen as indicative of the approach we should be taking. As I said, it's not, people will still find that there are issues, but we can continue to collect comment. And indeed, there's a long process now for the next tranche of EU funding, and perhaps through that it can be fine-tuned again. So I hope I've kind of explained the current situation to you.
Thank you very much. It shouldn't get the impression that everything we said is just too late to get entrance in the paper. So that's, I guess, important that we, at any time, we get the feeling that it's worth what we're doing here, the 2 days. So that's...
No, absolutely. And there are one or two things that I am going to check, particularly on the skills side. And also, just for those countries, because some countries like Spain, Germany, and Romania have already done a translation. We're going to send around a track changes just to make it a little easier for those who've already translated, so they're not translating from the beginning again. But as Erminia Shakitano said, we must now push very hard for multiple translations. And I just mentioned 3 countries. There are more. Three languages. There are more than that, but certainly we will send around a document with track changes to make it a bit easier, because a lot of volunteer work has gone into this.
Grellan?
Yes.
So following up what Ulrike has just now asked, but is there not? Does it mean that you are not intending at all, at least with us who participated, to share? Can we continue talking?
Yeah.
To share that sort of revised version for if we have some very, very last perhaps comments. It's always more eyes outside of the ICOMOS group.
Well,
seems to me it would make sense. You can give 1 week, not more. It should not delay too much, but at least we have all got involved so much in this conference. Okay. So it would be interesting to hear. And if there is something
I think, Sneska, at this stage, it would have to be something fairly fundamental. I mean, we have had a long consultation process through 2018. Then we've had responses, and we now have this revision. I suppose some of the issues, of course, relate to, there's a huge voluntary aspect to all of this, and it's important to get something out. I mean, a certain number of things which were discussed at this meeting have already been addressed. Just to say that it was just that the document wasn't completed in time for people presenting at this conference. But I think that the discussions have still been very, very valuable. I think there are a few issues which have come up that I've made note of, which we will definitely look at. I mean, I'll discuss this with our Director General, Marie-Laure Lavenier, and just sort of see what we can do. But we're not in a position to open up the whole document again, because there has been an enormous amount of consultation in relation to it. But if there are some very fundamental points coming out of this conference, we will certainly try and take this on board. And I do take note of the point you made in relation to climate change.
No, because I understand what you're saying, but it's a little bit awkward that there is a conference and we all got engaged, and then you tell us at the conference that in fact the revision of the text is already closed. So at least without you could share that document to the participants of the conference, not for a wide consultation, give 1 week. Anything that I think it would be a respect also for all the people who embrace this debate and want to participate in disseminating the document. So it would, I don't think that it should be any
for the heritage
burden
industry.
On you.
We're back on
speakers or
discussion between Grellan and Sneska.
Proposal to Marie-Laure. It'll have to go back then, of course, again to the working group. But do bear in mind that there were
Claudia coming back.
I'm trying to get you to pipe down.
Yeah. I have news from the conference room. I can hear myself twice. We will go online again in 1 minute. Hopefully the problem has been solved and it will work. And I hope Mr. Maringer is still with us. I cannot see him anymore. Mr. Maringer, Mrs. Plate, are you there? Are you with us?
Yes, I'm there.
Very good. Can you please turn on your camera if that's okay with you? Yeah. There.
Yasmin, will you want me to make a start again on the summary?
That is up to the technicians. What do the technicians say?
You want to? We don't know
should
how much.
Start again?
Yeah. Okay.
Can the rest of you just?
Okay. If you give me the green light, and then if there's the same problem, just let me know.
So we go online, and then maybe Mr. Nipan will also say something. I don't know where we will restart. Let's just. Okay. I will just. Will now 5, 4, 3.
Am I online?
2, 1.
Can you hear me? Okay. Good. Okay. Well. The technicians here say you should start again, Grellan, because the YouTube thing was so bad. We'll have to retake the whole thing. So let's just put this heritage industry back on track and finish this session. Please, Grellan, can you go at it again now? Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
We are hearing you fine.
Terrier, can you?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I will make a start. I'm doing the summary of session 2, and the key words being for the keynote, which was Benedict self-slagged from ICOMOS Belgium. Cultural heritage conservation contributes to economy and social cohesion. Important for 80% of Europeans. The ERDF funding is important for cultural heritage, offering opportunities. Quest for Quality, European Year of Cultural Heritage 2018 flagship project. Working group approach to the project. Recommendations identified, making them operational. Report of the European Court of Auditors. Feedback on quality principles. Recent editing work. Extent of changes, selection criteria tool as an innovative aspect, finishing with actions. There were 7 statements. The first from Marianne Knudsen from ICOMOS Norway. Quality principles are important for funding programs. Concerns with initial document, particularly contemporary design issues and case study discussion. Local communities. Importance of rights-based approach, benefits of the checklist or selection criteria, and sustainability. Bajber Munice from ICOMOS Latvia, the second statement, meeting infrastructural needs, creation of quality environment, incorporation of quality principles in regulatory documents by member states, incorporation of key principles into programming documents. The third statement was from Erminia Sciacchitano, ICOMOS Italy. Value of cultural heritage and policy framework, holistic approach, dialogue and communication, concept of quality, sustainable development, guidance and tools, translation and dissemination, and managing change. The fourth statement came from Anne Grady from the EU Commission, Culture Unit, EU and Cultural Heritage, Public Perception, European Year of Cultural Heritage 2018 Legacy Projects, captured in European Framework for Actions on Cultural Heritage, Horizon 2020, and Sophia Platform. Integration of quality, promoting high-level skills and quality standards. I'm going to include now Beatrix Schadenberg, who was unable to give her paper, but the key words which actually are very important to our discussion. EU funding experience, operational programs and funding objectives, position of cultural heritage in the new ERDF funding, development of independent cultural programs, EU regulation limitations, and the checklist or selection criteria assistance. The sixth statement was from Professor Dr. Not Caviezel, ICMOS, Switzerland. He talked about the consolidation of existing documents, quality principles edit to provide a shorter document, heritage preservation in Switzerland, terminology, public interest, and finished with recommendations. The last statement came from Dr. Georgios Toubekis, ICMOS, Germany. Culture and Europe, issues with EU funding frameworks, EU Court of Auditors, recommendations, limits of economic objectives, guidelines for member states to include cultural heritage sites, and small-scale. So that completes my summary of the main items of discussion by the keynote and the 7 statements. Thank you.
But since we've really had some problems with YouTube, I think the German translations can be given afterwards. They can be sent to you or something. But now I'm so set on just running this program on time that I guess most Germans understand English. It's probably worse the other way around. So I will ask for a short summary of the next session by Ulrike Platte. Ulrike, are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Okay.
Can
Please.
you? Okay. I'm giving the summary for the feedback of the perspective of conservators and restorers, with a keynote of Christoph Rauhut on the state of monument promotion funding in Germany. At the end of his contribution, Mr. Rauhut expressed 3 desiderates. Firstly, the implementation of quality principles in general funding programs, including regional funding. Secondly, by using the keyword mainstreaming, the wish that content specifications become an integral part of many decisions and processes. And thirdly, that it is incorporated into the possibilities for further qualifications in funding programs. All in all, the 6 statements offered very different perspectives and suggestions. One topic that came up again and again was the desire for better comprehensibility, a conscious version of the essential points, a desire for practicability. The principles should also be applicable to small measures, even for people who are not experienced in the field of funding. Further, there was a reference to the need of inventory, documentation, and scientific evaluation, which, although indispensable parts of every action on the monument, are not covered by funding programs. It should be noted that all measures, most of which fall under regional responsibility, are subject to approval of, I think, very important point. A further aspect concerned the various perspectives on the monument, which are to be taken into account, for which communication channels and discussions possibilities should be created. In this context, part of this is the requirement to explain the benefits of a measure to the public. It is also important to suggest that different funding programs should be combinable, as they often cover different aspects. Dr. Simon's description of the EU Biocidal Products Regulation 528/2012 was clear and informative.
You have 1 more minute.
The example shows that it is important to constantly and closely monitor developments and decisions at EU level. If the wrong decisions have been made and exceptions have not been taken into account, it requires a lot of manpower to change the decisions once again. Two important points for the text has been given by Mr. Nipan. Number 16, there we should not claim contemporary design for all new parts. We always should respect the decision at the unique point. And to number 19, that it is too restrict with regard to reconstruction. There may be situations or cases that reconstruction makes sense.
Yeah.
All in all, there were many different suggestions from different perspectives. All participants emphasized how much they welcome the compilation of the quality principles and how much they hope that they will find their way into funding programs throughout the EU. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was 4 minutes. Not bad. Okay, so then I will invite Paul Mehringer to report from the session 3 about the heritage industry. Paul, are you there?
Thank you. Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Go on.
Material, very good. Material cultural heritage plays an important role both the construction and tourist industries in Europe. We will carefully have to keep an eye on what Corona does with our historic towns and communities. How can we, for example, handle the declining number of tourists? Maybe Corona can also be a chance of showing the importance of cultural heritage and related tourists for Europe's economy. And it will be crucial, keynote speaker Nicola Halder has noted. We need better regulations and better funding and an easy way to assess European funds. It is important to identify all possible stakeholders who could finance maintaining material cultural heritage in Europe, beginning from private ones to communities and national funding, as Mr. Eimerich from the European Investment Bank noted. What will happen to the businesses engaged with maintaining and repairing tangible cultural heritage, especially small and regional businesses? Excuse me. Especially small and regional businesses who are important for the regional economy. For example, crafts are part of intangible heritage and as such are at the service of tangible heritage, and they are a guarantor for diversity and quality in this field. In our panel, we had a strong presence of crafts, crest conservation. German crafts, for example, play an important role for the German economy. The craft should not be excluded by the quality principles. Especially quality is asked in crafts if you don't want to have a low-level market with bad results for the maintaining and restoring of old buildings. And maybe the diversity of crafts in Europe's region is able to create an European quality label, maybe also with an Europa Nostra prize. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. 3 minutes. Great. It's difficult, I know. Okay, so we will proceed to the last short report from the 4th session. Mr. Wolfgang Görner, are you there?
Terje, hello. Yes, I'm here.
Okay, please.
Thank you. Dear Mr. Chairman, dear Dr. Nipan, dear Terje, dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm also very pleased to report about the Lecture 5, Objections and Suggestions from the perspective of the heritage-related citizens movement and of volunteers. Keynote speaker was Snežka Kvatflik-Mikhailović, Europa Nostra. Statements were given by Dr. Herlin Gundelach, Association Heimat and Environment in Germany, Constanze Fuhrmann, German Federal Foundation for the Environment, Mr. Marius Müller, European Students Association for Cultural Heritage, Signor Dottore Evangelista Leuzzi, CEO of Quaros Consulting and representing Punch, and finally, there was a comment given by Gabriele Kautz, German Federal Ministry of the Interior for Construction and Homeland. All 6 lecturers brought both well-founded and stimulating lectures, as well as a committed and exciting discussion. Let me give a few particularly noteworthy and summarized conclusions from the papers and the discussion. First, the preservation, renewal and further development of the European city has been a task also in Germany, as part of an intensive and very close dialogue between urban development, politics, citizens, the protection and preservation of monuments. The promotion of urban development has now been restructured while maintaining in particular the targeted promotion of civic engagement as the initial donor and engine. Second, the societal value of culture heritage entails responsibility for all actors, including civil society. Third, participatory processes must be given a stronger focus. Fourth, maximum accessibility of the European cultural heritage should be provided. Fifth, the recognition of cultural heritage as a common good is a precondition of quality. Sixth, the ICOMOS document on quality principles recognizes the importance of rewarding quality to create a positive environment, raise awareness and share success stories. Seventh, we have to ensure the mainstreaming of cultural heritage into all EU policies. Eighth, culture and cultural heritage shall be included into the major EU programs like Horizon Europe 2021 to 2027, the proposed European Green Deal, as well as the EU recovery plans as a key priority. But they're missing yet until now. Ninth, we need a closer cooperation between civil society, heritage professionals, the young and European cultural heritage movement, and institutions at all levels of governance. 10th, we shall reach out to and build bridges with investors and with the financial world. Therefore, we have to loudly clarify that cultural heritage is not only a basic value, especially for all European identities, towns and landscapes, but also a very, very big industry of enormous economic importance, especially for hundreds of thousands of jobs, also and especially in Corona times. 11th and final, but that will still not be enough. The cultural heritage sector has to organize its troops, has to join its forces and have to unite itself. So all important politicians and stakeholders might recognize this importance and change their minds. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Well, we are talking about 8 million full-time jobs. So you have a good point there. Right, we will now proceed to the second part of this plenary closing. I have a list of participants, and I will give them the word in the order that they appear on my paper. My first question to you all is, what are your general impressions of the quality guidelines? How do you evaluate the benefit of a quality guideline for EU financing or for embedding cultural heritage in EU funding programs? Do we need the guidelines? And finally, as was mentioned this afternoon, will they create more bureaucracy? So, Michael Kramer is first on my list, and I said I would be short on the CV stuff, but I think it is important to mention that he is member of the European Parliament, and he was a speaker, or he was representative, or he was in the Committee of Transport for the Green Party. and he is now chair of a a committee for transport and tourism. Mr. Kramer, can you answer my questions? Yes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that was my time. Since 1 year, I'm not a member of the European Parliament, but I have a lot of experience. Of course, I know the complaints. Oh, that is also difficult. It lasts so long. It is complicated. But my experience is, if there is a political will of the regional, the local, the national, and the European institutions, there can be a result. And for example, we have in this year the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall and the Iron Curtain in Europe. And the Berliners are thinking, oh, it is a Berlin thing. But it was not only a Berlin thing, it was not only a German one, it was a representative of the continent. And now to remember the past, that is very important. And my experience, I got a big majority for the Iron Curtain Trail in Europe from all the countries and all the groups in the European Parliament. And the difference is there. Some member states are very, very much in favor and some not. But if there is a political will, you will find a solution. And I think if there's a regulation, it can be easier. And of course, bureaucracy always can be in a lower way, but efficiency must be the priority.
Well, that's a clear statement. Efficiency must be a priority, even for conservators. Thank you. The second on my list is Dr. Timo Münzinger. He comes from, I must say it in German, the Deutsche Städtetag, and he works with development of towns and the position of these Städtebau people in these processes. Sorry, sometimes it's not so easy to translate. So please, Mr. Münzinger.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe the translation is German Association of Cities. So that's why I work for, and I'm the policy officer of urban planning and integrated urban planning. So maybe this give you a little bit of idea of that what I'm working on. And I would like to mention the comment from Mr. Kramer. He said when there is a will, then you will have a solution at the end. So that's wonderful. I will get to that in my comments, because basically I see a lot of similarities between the discussion here right now and the guidelines you have written and our position and our discussions within our association, because we also expressingly call for a better integrated approach when it comes to funding, not only on EU level, but also on all different levels which are involved in integrated development, integrated urban development, and of course, when it comes to preserve the cultural heritage. Only through an integrated approach, we can achieve synergies and sustainability. We would like to see an integrated approach that is accepted by all funding bodies, not just from the EU, so also from the state levels. And drafts, and even more importantly, approvals must be coordinated in terms of time and content. So that's what you call efficiency. So if there is coordinated approach, then I think we will be better in implementing these different quality principles. We also would like to see free accessible standards. You mentioned that in your paper also. And as far as I know, there is a draft right now in Germany in the parliament from the Liberate Party, the FDP, which are calling for free standards, free accessible standards. And there is ongoing negotiation between the Dean, the German Association of Standardization, and federal states, because of they have to finance the free accessible standards. And as far as I know, in Austria, they have similar efforts, and I know that, I think that they have already been implemented. So some of the standards are already free accessible in Austria. So maybe some of the Austrian colleagues can comment on that. Further on, honestly, I was a little bit skeptical about the quality requirements which are mentioned in the paper for analysis and documentation and evaluation, because I was afraid that we could completely prevent the one or the other project from being done because of the high requirements. We also have already a lack of human resources, a lack of finance resources. You all know that the corona pandemic have shaken the whole discussion about the financing and funding policies in the EU. So maybe we haven't put an eye on that. And the wonderful quotation you have in your paper right at the beginning in the introduction was just looking for quality and not making any compromises. I can go with that, but maybe we have to, when we come to the implementation, we have to take some compromises finally. So that was one of the points I was a little bit skeptical about, but overall I would like to stress that we as Association of Cities would highly welcome the paper and the implementation, because I think it's important to support especially small and medium-sized cities in applying and implementing those projects. So this could be very helpful so far.
Thank you. Next on my list is Dr. Ulrike Wendland. She's Geschäftsführerin der Deutschen Nationalkomitee für Denkmalschutz. I will not even try to translate it. So, please.
Thank you very much for inviting me. And so I will answer your first question, how are the general impressions on this quality principles? I think this well-founded compilation of quality standards is a great achievement, not only for the governance of EU funding, but also for other funding processes or programs. Many thanks from my side to the working group who did a very good work. We need guidelines as a basis and platform for further discussions, for not only for looking after funding projects, but also for discussing the doing of preservation and conservation work. We need guidelines to make decisions in conservation and preservation which are transparent and comprehensible. In the daily routine of preservation work, guidelines are needed to convince politicians and administrations. Often those stakeholders do not appraise the values of cultural heritage. Sometimes they see cultural heritage as a burden which prevents development, which costs only, which takes time in planning and building. But guidelines which are ratified by the European Union could be a great help in the daily argumentations and conflict resolutions, I think, because all have the same transparency of what to do and what not to do. So you asked also how should this work continue and get spread? Yesterday, in the first discussion, I was a little confused that the preparation group is still so eagerly discussing details. And my suggestion is guidelines never are perfect. The guidelines you have developed are already a very elaborate work. Let us use the remaining energy for spreading the knowledge of their existence and of their content. This is very much important, much more important than having the last sentence well done. They should be brought to preservation administrations, to universities, to political decision makers. Give them a shorter title. This title is really, really awful. The current does not tell anyone about the very important content. Make clear that these guidelines are much more than criteria for funding projects, but that they are guidelines for good practice in preservation and conservation. And will the guidelines create more bureaucracy? No, I think that concise guidelines will give projects a good quality from the beginning on, and this will diminish bureaucracy in correcting and in discussing and in conflict. So a well done project, and go and tell it everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, in line with the fact that I've decided not to translate the German titles, I will give the word to Dr. Markus Hasnetter. He is Vorsitzender der Vereinigung der Landesdenkmalpfleger in der Bundesrepublik Deutschland und Landeskonservator in Hessen. Please.
First of all, ICOMOS achieved a great clue with this meeting. ICOMOS forced a lot of stakeholders in the field of cultural heritage to read these principles and to read them carefully. And therefore we had a colorful kaleidoscope of different statements and feedbacks of this very useful document. The Association of State Conservators in the Federal State of Germany will strongly support the intentions of these principles, but I want to comment the comments. We heard statements that were very close to the text and made very concrete suggestions for improvement. On the other side, we heard positions that were more general in nature. But everyone agreed that we should condense and edit editorially these principles. I'm a little bit worrying that an overemphasis on particular concerns will disturb the necessary power of this document. Therefore, I appeal to those involved in this meeting to focus on the big issues. Then it could be possible for these principles to have a powerful impact outside the narrow circle of experts in the preservation of monuments. It's up to us whether it creates more bureaucracy.
Thank you. Well, it is a discussion point whether, or let's put it this way, intentionally the guidelines were for EU funds. There is a discussion of whether it will have repercussion on other funding mechanisms too, but we will leave that discussion aside. So the next two speakers are on my list. They're online, they're not physically here. The first is Sneska. I will not say anything more about you, Sneska. Everybody knows you, so please, are you there?
Do you see me? Do you hear me?
Yes, I see you and I hear you to greet you in the spirit of the new mosque.
No, greetings to Berlin and to all of you gathered in Berlin. I would have liked to be with you, but from the shores of the North Sea, I am with you. So your question, sort of what are my impressions of this conference? Extremely important, at an extremely important time for our European heritage movement. So it is the time where we have an enormous opportunity, but also a lot of risks for cultural heritage. Because as we all know, we will have an incredible recovery plan and program from the European Union will be put in place. That means that there will be more money available for the recovery of the society and the economy. And some of that money will be used for cultural heritage-related regeneration or development programs in cities and regions or in countryside, in rural areas. And so there is a crucial task and challenge for all of us to ensure that the quality principles that are embodied in the ICOMOS document that we are discussing in this conference are really applied in the way these funds are going to be used. So in a sense, I think this is a sort of, we are in a moment where we can make a quantum leap for our entire heritage movement, because we have been in the last more than a decade, we have been fighting first to have the European Union to recognize the value, the holistic value of cultural heritage for our society, economy, environment, identity of the people. As you remember, we have had this report presented in Oslo, by the way, Terje, Cultural Heritage Counts for Europe in 2015. And then we moved on with the European Year of Cultural Heritage, with so much important work has been done, including the work on quality principles. During this period, we have been fighting for more money. So it was a sort of a quantitative approach for getting more money from the European Union budgets available for cultural heritage. But now it is important that that money that will probably be larger than in the past, that money is used in accordance with quality principles.
You have 1 minute,
so this is, but again, it is a holistic approach, and I want to applaud the organizers of this conference, that you have had these various sessions with the various focus, so broadening up the scope of various stakeholders that have been encouraged to comment and to somehow be part of the movement and the momentum also created by this important document. So we were fighting for recognition of the holistic value. I think we have gone quite far in terms of in European terms and European decision makers. And the fact that now in the next generation EU recovery plan, culture is mentioned as sort of one of the areas where this recovery fund will be put.
Can you end this thing now? Please, can you end this thing now? Otherwise, I'll cut you out. I will be less authoritarian in the next questions, but now I'm just running to catch up with some time.
Okay.
Oh, you're allowed to finish.
So, sorry, what did you say? I thought that I had to stop.
No, I said you are running out of time, and if you don't stop soon, I will cut you out. So please finish, short.
So I think I've made my main points to point. So I think that I want to endorse also what the representative of DNK just said. I think that now it's also the moment to pass from the expert phase of preparation of the document into the widest possible dissemination.
That's the next question. That's the next question. We'll come back to that. Thank you. Sorry. Okay.
No, perfect.
And the last person is, of course, Grelan. Are you there, Grelan?
Do you hear me and see me, Terje?
Yes, I see you. I hear you.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. Fine. I'm glad you said that, because I didn't realize we'd answer the two questions separately. But anyway, what I think has been important with this conference in relation to the quality principles is the fact of the many perspectives which have come together. And I think this has really been very important for us. Also, I think that many voices that we have heard are voices that want to be heard. And I think this is a very, very good thing, because the quality principles should be seen in many ways as defining, but in many ways as liberating too. And it's a different approach. And I think the conference has given us the platform to broaden the discussion. I think there has considerable interest in the quality principles, and I think what Dr. Wendland has said has been very encouraging. You mentioned about the evaluation. I mean, this is actually envisaged in the document. There is a short-term evaluation and a longer-term view, and some of the recommendations reflect on evaluation. Evaluation is very important because the large sums of money which have been spent and will be spent through EU funding, it needs to be demonstrated that they have been well spent. So evaluation is not just economic, it's cultural, it's technical, environmental, and of course, impacts on communities. So these things are very important. And in the longer term, sustainable management and maintenance. So I think it's essential to have this level of evaluation and to revisit, to measure benefits and state exactly what they are, because this will help enormously, I think, in the future. And we have to be answerable because it's public money. Do we need the guidelines? Well, of course, because I've been involved, you say I would definitely agree, but I do. And I think part of the process of putting the document together was looking at previous situations, which have given rise to many concerns. This is where ICOMOS got involved initially before working with the EU. And these were articulated in lessons learned. We looked at the previous situations and where things had gone wrong. And I just have a couple more things just to say, and then I'll finish. I think there is a real need to have a holistic framework for quality, as Arminia Shakitano has demonstrated in her statement. There will be an awful lot of funding coming on stream, and it is important it is spelled well to safeguard our diverse cultural heritage, to add new layers to it, and to ensure the derivation of benefits for communities. Thank you, Taya.
Thank you, Gerlin. Well, we're not doing so bad. I'll excuse myself for being a bit bitchy, but now I will try to open up a bit, but I would not prefer long monologues. I would like to prefer more an exchange of ideas. So my second question that goes to all of you is, as Sneska was starting to say, what is now the way forward? How is the process? When and how will the guidelines be applicable and finalized in the European Union and in ICOMOS? And how do we think that these quality guidelines will impact on different funding sources and projects, not only EU money? I know it's a fairly large question, but let's encounter it. Let's go head on. So I was asked not to start at the top of the list again. So then number 3 is a good number to start with. Mr. Wendland. No, Mrs. Wendland, sorry.
As I said before, I would suggest not to discuss these guidelines not too long, because like Snežka Kvetlik said, it's high time. We are in a process of change, and we stand in the next time there will be funding in a much more or in a great measure. So we should hurry up and finish these guidelines. As I said, they will not be better when you discuss 1 year more. They are good enough to give them into practice, in a good practice. I'm not informed enough how to get this into the Europe machinery of funding and discussing, but I think the first step should be to give them to all practitioners in the European countries, to those who do everyday work with the monuments and who do preservation work. They should know about it. So this is a good spreading, and this is my suggestion for one way to start and to give them in a broader, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry I broke you off, Sneska. Do you want to continue where you were heading?
Thank you so much, Terje. Yes, so we have an important document, and I will immediately make a suggestion because the representative of DNK said perhaps we could make it a shorter title. I think the perfect title for that would be European Heritage Quality Principles. And there is a sort of course, ICOMOS has been preparing it, and there is every credit ought to be done for the organization that has produced it. But now it's time that it flies first within our wide European heritage community. And as I mentioned, we also have the European Heritage Alliance. ICOMOS is part of it. There is 50 different networks and organizations. We ought to embrace it and widely communicate, because we should be the first one who should be constantly referring to this as an important reference document, because we should not have any sort of false hope that this document would be officially adopted by any European Union decision-making body. That is not going to happen, but even it's not necessary. Because if we would all be constantly quoting that document and using it while we are doing lobbying for mainstreaming of heritage in various policies, and in particularly now in the context of the Europe's recovery, and if we would use that, and I'm already using it when we are campaigning when heritage is in danger somewhere, if we would start for individual cases saying to people, for example, in Albania, they want to put some money for helping with the damage of heritage by the earthquake. And I said to the ambassador of the EU, you have to read this document that ICOMOS has adopted to make sure that the 50 million euro that you have are going to be used in a proper way. So I think that is something, it doesn't cost money, but it costs our involvement and our engagement. So that means that these guidelines also needs to be presented as much as possible, quality principles, also I would say in the Committee of the Regions. Because there you have about more than 400 representatives of Europe's regions and cities who are sitting there. They have a consultative function, but I'm sure that we will be very pleased to assist you to get a presentation of these quality principles, even if they are not an official EU document. But in fact, it is the service which the heritage community is giving to the European Union decision-making bodies in order that the money, which is the public money, is done in accordance with the quality principles. So this is something that we offer definitely also to liaise with what we are doing. Somebody said, I think these principles has to become the practice. And also you have developed that document. We are organizing the awards, as you know, and it's also serving the purpose of celebrating excellence in quality, to see how we can also, these two initiatives can sort of be more close together, and that we can also, through the awards, more sort of highlight what are the standards and principles that we want European Union to promote as much as possible with the money it is involved. But of course, also this principle should not only apply to the projects that are funded by the EU. You know very well that rarely, first of all, projects are fully funded by the EU funds. There are many, many more funds that are involved, public and private. Financial sector, business investors are there. So that means that I think I mentioned it in my intervention, we need very much also to get the business community, the investors, the financial institutions aware of these quality principles, because in principle, they should also be interested that the money they are putting in it, they're well spent. So to sum up, we have to move on from the expert phase of drafting as perfect document as possible to the phase of raising awareness, disseminating, and getting as many stakeholders on board, from the EU decision makers to the business community and financial sector. Of course, civil society is on board, that I have already said at length in my keynote speech in the previous session.
Good. Thank you. So your suggestion was that it be called European Quality Guidelines, if I got you correctly.
No, I said European Heritage Quality Principles. That's what it is.
European Heritage Quality Guidelines. Thank you. Well, let's not start that discussion yet.
No, it's not for discussion. I've just thrown something, so the proposal, and then it is, of course, the authors and the ICOMOS will discuss that. But I think that they should not be afraid.
With Mrs. Ulrike Wendland and Mrs. Sneska Michalovic, because the main message is to spread the news, to spread the quality principles or the quality guidelines, or however they will call in the end. Because as you already know, the corona pandemic has seriously disrupted the planning of the financial framework and funding frameworks in the EU. And as far as I know, the discussion of the programs are pretty well advanced right now. So there is not much time left for changing in these kind of funding programs right now. And the main goal is that the quality principles are used by the practitioners in the local cities or from all the other stakeholders. So I would say spread the news, spread the guidelines. That's one of the main focuses right now on. And if they get adopted by the EU, it's fine, but maybe this is not the main goal right now you are heading to. So I would say that's pretty helpful. And maybe to put one thing further, because you already asked it, to spread the guidelines is one thing, but maybe you want to strengthen the quality of preservation of cultural heritage, but you don't try to strengthen the bureaucracy. So there should be a kind of way in the middle between bureaucracy and quality. So the main goal is to strengthen the quality. And I think if it's an informal paper, it's fine, because most of the people will put out the quality aspects and not the bureaucracy aspect. So you can work right away with that. So I can live with that if the paper is spread right now. And as you already mentioned, of course, if we write the paper, we would change a little bit here and change a little bit there. But, well, that's not the main goal. I think the content is the important thing. And the idea of quality criteria is the right idea. So, yeah, talk about it and spread the news. Thank you.
Thank you. As a piece of information, I can say we've already, or I can't say we anymore since I'm not working in the directorate, but the Norwegian directorate has already talked to the EA financial mechanism about using the guidelines as a basis for funding cultural heritage in the newest member countries. But we are just waiting for it to be completed. So I will then give the word to Markus Hassenetter.
I'm convinced that if we want to have a wide spread of this paper, we needed to use it in a shortened and condensed way. And maybe therefore we can use the 7 points at the end of the paper. Like the 7 lamps of architecture in the 19th century from John Ruskin, we have now the 7 points of ICOMOS in the 21st century, in a shortened and condensed way to communicate the belongs on the concerns of preservation of heritage.
That's all. Thank you. Well, for the second round on my list, I still have you, Grellan, and I have Mr. Michael Kramer. Kramer?
Yeah, I think there must be a regulation. But a regulation which nobody has to follow, you can forget it. So we need a guideline that is not a law on the European level. But if you want to have European money, of course, there must be a guideline which is accepted by the European Union. And if you want national money, you need a guideline which is accepted by the national body, and so on. Therefore, it must be very easy, not a big book, that is clear, but at the end it must be accepted. You can't say, no, Europe, go away, we only want your money, but the other things we are not interested in. And that is not the right thing, and I think there is a possibility to organize it. For example, we have now in the European Union the Green Deal. Of course, we have to accept the Green Deal with the monuments. Of course, you can't destroy the Green Deal with another thing. So there must be a cooperation, and I think you can, if there is a political will, I mentioned it at the beginning, then you will find a good compromise. Yeah, but not at the beginning you say, no, we make this. Then the local regions say, no, only local, only regional, only national, only European. That is not my view of the future.
Thank you. If I try to paraphrase what some of you have lately said before I give the word to Grellan, is that you are looking for some kind of more operational guidelines, easier to implement, easier to communicate, but that they also become, that the people who apply for funding can handle this without writing 500 pages. Is that correct? Yes, thank you. Okay. Grellan, you are the last in this second round. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can see
Fine.
you. Please.
Fine, Terry. Just to say that the title actually comes really from the Commission, because that's how they were commissioned. And certainly it is timely for us in the second edition to look at the title again. And I think what Sneska has suggested is highly appropriate. I just continue the discussion from Michael Kramer in a moment, but just to say that we are in the process of completing the revision where there has been a lot of input from around Europe, and this has been very important. Also, as was mentioned before, languages, we must get it into as many operative languages as possible. Now, if we think how applicable they will, it will depend really on how well integrated they are into the process in the next tranche of funding. And I would make the point that these quality principles were actually commissioned by the EU, and the DGEAC will be in a position to promote the document internally and to share it with other DGs. So it's not a completely outside document at all. And I think this is one of the benefits, because whereas it's not an official document, it's being commissioned, and it's sort of, in a way, it's sort of semi-official. I think this is a very important point. So that's in relation to the EU, but also, as Michael Kramer mentioned, in relation to the member states. And the network of ICOMOS national committees, I think, can be harnessed to promote the quality principles in the member states. And this engagement, I think, will be essential. That's really our next move. And there needs to be a strategy by the EU to influence the member states to adopt the quality principles in relevant programs. And then for certainly our ICOMOS national committees to work with seminars and workshops to present the principles to the member states, and particularly to prepare them for the implementation. I mean, we really have a lot of work still to do to actually work on this. So I think we need to push within the formality of the European Commission to ensure that the quality principles are seen as an important element of getting funding. Also, that they're embraced by the member states in their projects, with the help of particular, I suppose, the ICOMOS national committees can do this, but also as other statements we've had in this session, that we really need to disseminate and push forward. And there are many organizations, as Sneska has mentioned, the European Heritage Alliance, which is a really important group of a very large number of members who can really help us also to promote this. So I think we have still a lot of work to do, but I think we have a kind of a general framework and strategy within which we can push forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we still have half an hour. I'm very happy about that. The question is now, what do you want to comment? Do you have a message to give? Do you have something provoking to say? Otherwise, I have to fire off some questions. I have some in reserve, but I thought, this is really not my discussion. I'm just trying to chair it. So is there anybody who
Terry, may
wants
I
to
mention a
come
couple of
online on stage?
things? Terry, could I mention a couple of things?
I cannot hear you.
Can I mention a couple of things?
Sure.
Yeah, there were just two things. One was that the Green Deal and cultural heritage. And really, I suppose, given the fact that we have been engaging with the EU and the EU has been engaging with cultural heritage, it is quite incredible that in the Green Deal that cultural heritage really was not included. And we're working to change this. We have joined with Europa Nostra, and I'm sure Sneska will want to add something here, but we have joined in partnership to produce a green paper, which will hopefully influence the EU Green Deal to embrace cultural heritage. This is really so essential. And I know Sneska will talk about it with greater passion than I am able to muster. But I think this important work, which is currently underway, and there will be an online conference held, probably a digital forum sometime in September, but this will be the publishing of a green paper, which will be very important. The other thing I would just like to mention, and maybe other people can come in, is in one of the sessions today, we talked a lot about skills, vocational education and training, mobility in Europe. And certainly this is something which is really important. I think one or two of the organizations felt there wasn't enough emphasis in the quality principles on this. But we need to look at the heritage skills EU strategy, because if these crafts are not included, they actually should be, because they're a very important point. So I just make those 2 points, and perhaps some of the other speakers would like to speak on those. Thank you.
Yes. Before I give the word to Kramer, I would like to make a little Norwegian comment. You know that in Norway, the immovable cultural heritage is part of the Ministry of Environment. And talking about this Green Deal, maybe my former colleagues in Norway could be of assistance. They have some experience with this, being part of the environment family. So that was just a tip from my side. Mr. Kramer, please.
I mentioned at the beginning that we have now the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Iron Curtain in Europe. And that is very important because there is the green belt. That is the border between East and Western Europe, or East and West of the world. And now that is a monument. And in Germany, there is a decision 10 years ago that there could be a natural cultural monument. And now Thüringen and Sachsen-Anhalt, they have made it. That is a national monument now, a nature monument. And that should be in Germany, but it should be in Europe as well. And all are working on this. And I think that is very important, because I mentioned the Iron Curtain Trail along the western border of the former Warsaw Pact states. That is a cycle route or a hiking route. You can make it. And it is accepted by all the member states and all the political groups in the European Parliament. And now it is also a cultural route, because the European Council of 44 member states, they have decided that that is now also a cultural route because the membranes is very, very important. And I like to quote Wilhelm von Humboldt. He once said, only the one who knows the past will have a future. The past, the division was very, very bad. The overcome of the division by the people initiatives, that was great. And never forget that when people change the world, the politicians in East and West on this has only reacted, they had to react. But the people have changed the world. Never forget that. And that in combining with the Green Deal as a Green Belt initiative and for cycling and hiking, that is a good project for the next future on the local, regional, national and European level.
Well, it sounds almost like Churchill stole this thing from Humboldt, because Churchill said something like, if you don't know where you are coming from, you can hardly know which way you are going. So there was the question here raised yesterday about embedding cultural heritage in whatever. What are the feelings of that? You know, my personal feeling is a bit like, okay, first of all, we are very happy when cultural heritage is mentioned specifically. But then we are disturbed when it's not mentioned. But if it was embedded, you wouldn't have to mention it, would you? Because it would be not. So I'm just asking for some responses. Can I ask my technicians, how do I know if Sneska wants to say something and Grellan, you know?
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah. No, I would like to sort of to end with, you know, a statement as a heritage activist. I have given my life for heritage activism and lobbying in European level. And I want to use this opportunity to say, I mean, I ended my speech, my keynote speech, by saying it's not just the Europe moment. This is it ought to be a cultural heritage moment in Europe. And I think we ought to lift up the game politically. Michael Kramer said, if there is a political will, we can achieve something. And I think we, the heritage community, the heritage stakeholders, have to be more self-confident of what do we represent. We represent both the heart and soul and memory of Europe, but we represent the bread and butter of Europe, because heritage is, some people are saying, a gold mine of petrol of Europe. So because we should be much more confident of the importance of the resource that we represent, the resource and the dimension of our life and of our environment, we ought to go much higher in our lobbying for cultural heritage, of course, always on the basis of quality principles and quality engagement at all levels of governments. And so I have here with me the speech that Angela Merkel, Chancellor Merkel, made at the European Parliament last week, at the beginning of the German presidency of the European Union. And there was one important issue that she raised and got a lot of discussion and will have even more discussion, is the conditionality of spending EU funds with regard to European values, including the rule of law. So I think that this is the moment. That's why I say this is our moment, because there is an increased recognition that cultural heritage is part of the European way of life, but in an inclusive, open way, not, you know, what against the others, but it's something which characterizes our society, which is bringing us together. And discussion that the European Union is now going increasingly to have about European values, because they are endangered. This is almost a part of intangible cultural heritage, which is currently endangered in an increasing number of not only countries of the world, but even member states. We also need to use that discussion on the conditionality of the EU funds, that when they are used for regeneration of our cities and regions and our countryside, that using cultural heritage on the basis of these quality principles is an extraordinary way of using EU funds, once again, taxpayers' money, taxpayer funds, for improving the quality of life, the well-being, the environment, the sort of the green and just transition of our society, of our economy. So we have an extraordinary joker in our hands to play in the crucial discussion that is going to go now, which is happening now in the European Parliament, in the European Council, in the various ministries and the Council of Ministers as well. And we ought to organize once again our troops. That's what I said in the previous session. And I think I'm delighted to see that ICOMOS and Europa Nostra, we are increasingly sort of working together with this European Heritage Green Paper that we're going to produce. This is just one of the examples. I think we can do so much more by joining our forces, speaking with as orchestrated chorus, not with one voice, but a well-orchestrated chorus of heritage voices in order to get as much positioned cultural heritage at the heart of what European recovery and revival ought to be.
Terje, may I just add briefly to that?
Sure. And then
I was just Sneska has said, because I think this is really important. And I think that we need to work very much, both individually, but much more importantly, we have to work together, and we have to work on the decision makers to persuade them. And I think this is a vital moment, working on this green paper, but also working together to have a very strong voice to ensure that we promote the importance of cultural heritage. As has been said, it's embedded in all of the things that we do, but it's not necessarily fully recognized. I might just refer back to the European Investment Bank speaker, Mario Emmerich, this morning, who said that establishing real value of a cultural heritage is much more important, much more complex. But however, it does not mean it cannot be done. And we have these challenges, and we must rise together to take on these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Menzinger.
Yeah, right. I would just go back to one point you have already mentioned, is the German presidency the next half year. And the German presidency right now are working on the Charter of Leipzig, a new version of the Charter of Leipzig. They are working on the Charter of a new territorial cohesion. And they use the same keywords you have already used in your paper. They are talking about the integrated approach. They are talking about development for the common good, about quality aspects, about involving all different stakeholders. So you see, it's pretty similar. So there are a lot of points which you can dock on and work on that together. So I think you're right when you're talking about this is a big chance, because the next half year there will be a big chance for that kind of statements, points, just to bring them on political level and different levels in the EU because of the German presidency. So I think you're absolutely right if you're saying that's a big chance. And a lot of other papers they are working right now are already mentioned that kind of points. So I think it's good just to use that kind of wind from the back and go with the sails. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I add
something? From my own
experience,
when we managed to get money from the regional fund for a study of the socioeconomic value of the material cultural heritage, it raised an enormous interest among the regional developers and regional politicians, to the extent that there is now a new S-Bond project coming online, which is guided from the top, which means that all countries have to participate. And it's supposed to be about the material benefits, economic benefits, and not least the quality of life connected to historic environments, buildings, music, whatever. So what I wanted to say with that is that sometimes I'm amazed at how we get nowhere with our own people who are just discussing trivialities sometimes, and how much interest we seem to create among other professions when we manage to explain to them the benefits. Well, the floor is open.
I just want to make a short mention to Mr. Munzinger. This important charter, Leipzig Charter, who is reformed, we must succeed to mention there the belongings of cultural heritage. In the first version, there's no mention of cultural heritage and protecting monuments. I think we should use the experience from the funding program Städtebaulicher Denkmalschutz, this integrative look kind of view, to write again the Leipzig Charter and to bring these points in this new document. I hope there's a cooperation and partnership in this way.
Kramer, please.
Because you mentioned if you can interest different communities or different organizations in such a subject. I mentioned the Iron Curtain Trail is for cycling. Cycling is very environmentally friendly, it is healthy, that is well known, but it has an economic effect. Nobody knows that, but in the cycling industry in Europe, you have more jobs than in the coal industry or in the steel industry. And 30 years ago, cycling tourists, oh, poor people, students from university or school. The opposite is now. I know people that have their Mercedes in the garage and riding their bike through Europe. And there's a study from Switzerland, and they found out that a bike tourist without accommodation spent per day 35 euros and a car tourist 10. So that is an economic effect, especially for those regions which are on the border. They have suffered by the division. And now, okay, in Germany, we call it Zonenrandgebiet, never go there. But that is a possibility for them also with the economic effect. And that must be a combination. And therefore, I support your proposal to combine these issues.
Well, you know, sometimes I think, is there somebody who wants to say something? Yes, please. Yes. Sneska, please.
Yes. I just want to make a call to our German colleagues. You now can help us enormously because of your connection, perhaps not yet established with all German decision makers important for the German presidency, but I think we really have an extraordinary opportunity. So we also have the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, who is German. We have the President of the Culture and Education Committee of the European Parliament, who is German. We have the President of the European Investment Bank, and we have seen how important ally the European Investment Bank is. Werner Hoyer, German. So we have Chancellor Merkel fighting for European values. So we have an extraordinary moment in the history of the European integration, and a very difficult one where Germany is going to play a very important role. And I want to also mention the very important role of Minister Grütters, who only recently signed a joint letter with Minister Franceschini from Italy and Minister Rister, at the time Minister of Culture from France, jointly calling for larger amounts of money to be put into the Creative Europe program, which is the only program stimulating European cooperation in the wide field of culture. Of course, that is a very small program, but it would be important that that small program, which supports European cooperation, is going to be increased as part of the recovery of Europe. And again, Minister Grütters was playing an important role. So I want to make a message to the organizers of this conference, if possible, also carry further the message that European Heritage Alliance has sent with our manifesto, 9 of May manifesto, to all the EU leaders. And the letter I have also shared with the organizers, the letters that we have sent to Chancellor Merkel and all the other heads of state, to pass the message that also the specific message of the requirements of quality, but also that needs to be mainstream, that it has to be applied in a holistic way in all various funds and programs that will have an impact, direct or indirect, on cultural heritage. And virtually every single program of the European Union has an impact, direct or indirect, on cultural heritage. So I think let's use that moment. Europa Nostra is at your disposal, because as you know, we have a Brussels-based office, and which is becoming more and more important. So our connections in Brussels are very strong. But if through the German colleagues we can have also a more direct connection to the leading German European decision makers and to the German presidency, I think we could achieve more during these 6 months than perhaps we have done in the past.
Thank you, Snežka. There was one short comment I wanted to make about this situation connected with the corona crisis. At least the experience in Norway is that when tourism stops up, suddenly the politicians realize how complex this industry is, how many people are involved directly and indirectly. And similarly, we could take that experience and move it over to the cultural heritage industry. Now, I don't want a second corona thing, or burning down churches or something to demonstrate this, but this is an example of this post-industrial economy and how things function and how politicians are completely lost sometimes. And then just to finish, before I give the word to Münzinger, I'm rather ashamed, I'm sitting here and my government is overriding its own legislation to tear down this building, the Y block in Oslo, with the Picasso drawings on and a new building technique. So sometimes I wonder what I'm doing here. But please, Mr. Münzinger.
I just want to answer Mr. Hansen because you asked about the Leipzig Charter. And I just looked it up. The last draft from May, the cultural heritage is mentioned on 2 pages explicitly. And of course, maybe just let me read that. It's thus culture is at the core of any sustainable urban development, including the preservation and development of the built and non-built cultural heritage. So that is right on the introduction side, second side. And on side 6, let me see, I can read that up. I'll look that up. Yeah. Furthermore, the management of public spaces and green and blue infrastructure, as well as the preservation and revitalization, that's the right one, of built cultural heritage are important. So it's not an own phrase, but it's always mentioned within all the others. So it's already in, but maybe not as important as you would like to see it. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there some more people? Oh, no, nobody wants. Yeah. Okay. So, well, to sum up a bit, what's going to happen now in regards to these quality guidelines? This it makes me think of another Churchill quote, which goes something like that: "This is not the end of the beginning or the beginning. This is just the beginning of the end," or something like that. Yeah, and so we foresee a rather long process First of editing the document, then maybe shortening it for some reason, and then distributing it, and then working the strings in the corridors wherever they might be in Brussels or someplace else. Is that a fair summing up?
I will quote Churchill as well. Either you will hang together or you will hang separately. Therefore, in Europe, we have to hang together. And for example, for the regulation, if you look in the future, the green belt should be UNESCO World Heritage Monument. And think that is a UNESCO World Heritage, and Europe is not able to have a regulation for that. That would be crazy. Therefore, either we hang together or we hang separately.
Whichever way we hang, I seem to understand, huh? What to say.
Terry, may I just add one thing here?
I agree.
I think you have to be careful when you use the word hang.
Gerlin wants to say something. Thank you.
It has many meanings, but I just would like to say, because I know a couple of the speakers have mentioned the importance of moving forward very quickly with this, just to say that the document will be ready in its revised form very soon. I think if we were to go back to the drawing board and try and work on a very short, concise document at this stage, we would lose a lot of valuable time. And I think given the time we have, we need to proceed with the second edition of what we will have. Having said that, as things move along, it may be possible to produce some sort of a reduced document, which would perhaps be very, very useful for decision makers who are not going to read the whole document. So I just want to make that point. Thank you.
As we say in Norwegian, misunderstand me correctly. What I meant is that, of course, we first have to finish the present document. Otherwise, we do not know what we are going to condense. So, but I foresee there is a process, and I agree. The main document, as soon as possible, keeping in line with the quality considerations, and then we attack the next issue.
Are we done?
I don't know, there's a bit of confusion here. Somebody wants to say something. I have a technician pointing to the screen. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to say goodbye to you all and to say that I prefer not to hang together. I would prefer to work very closely together, to fight for heritage together, and perhaps why not to cycle along the green belt of Europe and sort of to bring Europeans closer together through our joint action for cultural heritage. And thank you for the extraordinary important conference that you've organized at the beginning of the German presidency.
Thank you, Sneska. So maybe it's better to say, let's hang out.
Yes, that's better.
We technically finished. Is there anybody who wants to say something before? Otherwise, I'm closing the session. I don't see any point of sitting here. Okay. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to our guests online. Thank you to the people who dared come here in these Corona times. And thank you to the organizers. I must really say I am impressed. Thank you. Okay, we go offline.